You may have noticed under my name at the beginning that the line underneath the name of the London Knowledge Lab is exploring the future of learning with digital technologies. And I just want to explain, I hope the interpreter can manage this. It's rather a tricky thing to understand, but it makes a point that I want to use in my talk. Because it has two meanings. It's exploring the future of learning with digital technologies. And learning, there won't be any other kind of learning, so we have to explore that future. But at the same time, it's also exploring the future of learning using digital technologies. I think that those of you who went to Barbara Mean's workshop yesterday will see the kind of thing that I mean, that actually assessment that really exploits and capitalizes on technology is a way that we can learn about the future of learning. What it takes to learn is terribly under-researched. 100 years of research in education, and we still don't really know what it takes to learn, and especially what it takes to teach. We know more about the former than we do about the latter because we had the help of psychology for the last 100 years. But in terms of what it takes to teach, we don't know as much as we should. And what it takes to teach in the face of a technology which is everywhere, which is portable, which is massively powerful, I think is still something that we have to research. So the aim of my talk is to think about the design and evaluation of TEL as a window on learning in general. And if I really only succeed in making one point this afternoon, let me make that point. That I think the best hope we have of being better teachers for our students is to understand how technology, when it becomes part of the infrastructure like electricity, like water, like technology is beginning to become, how that can really help us to understand learning and teaching, because the name of this game that we're all playing is to be to have better learners and for us to be better teachers. Of course, we will need help to do that, and our technology colleagues are going to be absolutely crucial. But really, let me give you the slogan. Of course, you have to understand to design. If you're going to design anything to do with learning and teaching, you have to understand how people learn and how people can teach. But at the same time, we are designing things, we are designing technologies, software and hardware, or we should be, that will help us understand about learning. So it's that duality that I want to talk about more today. And I want to give you some ideas, some challenges for our research community, and I want to draw on the program of research that I'm the director of in the UK, which is a $20 million 4-year program of research that, as Alan pointed out, is a collaboration between the Funding Council in the UK that funds educational research and the Funding Council that funds computer science research. This is a tremendous opportunity for us, because usually you want to do education research and they say, well, we're not going to fund a computer science person or even a programmer. You have to find your own money for that. Or you go to the computer science board and they say, that's fine, you can do the computer science, but don't give us all this stuff about education. We're not interested in that. And so this is a big opportunity for us, and I want to give you some examples, but please let me be clear. There are hundreds of examples that I could have used in the place of this. It's just that I know about these best, and I'm not making any claims that these are in any way the best examples that I could have found. Okay, so here's the problem that is most often attempted to be answered in the journals. What does the computer do? I've lost count of how many times I've read a paper called, "What is the effect of the computer on the teaching of something?" I'm the editor of a journal which is about mathematics, and I can give you hundreds of examples, but of course I mustn't. But I can give you hundreds of examples. What is the effect of the computer on the learning of geometry? Well, actually, if you don't switch the computer on, it's not terribly important what the effect is. So it's the wrong question. It's like asking the question, what is the effect of paper and pencil on the learning of geography? Actually, I think the fact that we had until now to teach geography with pencil and paper has had a tremendous effect on what we think is possible to learn in geography. And geography is a tremendous example of where we can do really unthought of things. But to ask what the computer does is the wrong question. A better question is, what can we make the computer do? And even that's slightly the wrong question, but I'm going to stick with that for the moment. And I think there are four ways in which I'd like to group the current research that's taking place around the world. The first is the whole issue of personalizing learning and extending what it is possible to do. As I said, it would be crazy to teach geography without a GPS system, without a GIS system, if you have access to one. Just like it would be completely crazy to teach mathematics without a dynamic geometry system, if you know what that is. If you don't, it doesn't matter. But of course, all around the world, even in the developed countries that most of us represent here, there are lots and lots of people doing just that. So finding ways to express what was not expressible before, finding ways to help people to learn things which were really unlearnable before is a major challenge, and I think it's one that deserves itemizing in this way. The second one is the question of productivity. I think governments like to hear about productivity, and it is not unreasonable for governments to say, we've given you this many billion, what is the enhancement of productivity? Usually that is couched in terms of productivity for students on standardized tests. And I'll leave it to other people to discuss whether that's a good idea or not. You don't hear so much about the productivity of the teacher. Teachers spend huge amounts of time actually in contact with their students, but they also spend huge amounts of time preparing lessons, marking and grading and so on. And really, I think we have yet to see as much innovation and creativity on this question of productivity as we could have done. I'm going to give you an example of what I mean in just a minute. The third issue is the issue of flexibility, and the most common claim that one reads in the literature, even in the popular press, is that flexibility means it's great. You can study, you take your iPhone and you can download whatever you like from Google sitting on the bus, and so it makes learning extremely flexible because you don't have to be anymore in the classroom in the formal learning situations. Now that, of course, has some truth in it, but it is not the whole truth, because the whole truth is that flexibility has come to mean access to information. And while access to information has really been one of the areas, and you don't need me to tell you that, in the last 15 years, where access to information is just undreamt of, that access to information has not been accompanied by a similar access to knowledge. I think the transformation of information into knowledge has become the single biggest challenge for teaching that we have ever faced. And not least because the information itself really is trivial, more or less trivial, to access. It doesn't mean that the knowledge has necessarily become easier to construct from that information. You could even argue that the reverse is true, that people are completely swamped by information and believe that that information is by itself knowledge. We have thousands of examples every year of students in universities, tens of thousands, copying websites out for their assignments. And there's a kind of, as you know, I'm sure, there's a war going on. Who can produce software that will detect this that activity, and then the students try to outwit them. I'm sure, I can't believe that this doesn't happen in Hong Kong, even though your education system is much more successful than ours.